Okay, winners and losers. I'll just echo yours to kick us off on this, Ben, which is the NBA
Hmm.
and its fans. I think that there is a subsection of the most analytical, nerdy, let's talk about X's and O's basketball media that kind of puts on a nice show about how much they hate inside the NBA and all that it represents. Fans love this thing. It's a ratings machine. It's beloved. It is those four guys are as synonymous with the NBA for the average sports fan as anything on TV right now, outside of maybe LeBron James and Steph Curry. Losing this would have been a disaster. And it's no surprise that Tom Friend of SBJ had the nugget that the NBA pushed to make this part of the deal happen. And it's no surprise that this thing lived to see another day. And I think we're all better off for it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it's clear that this was the tightrope the NBA was walking. Was how do we dump Warner Brothers Discovery and keep inside the NBA going? And so I think that they obviously managed to do that. And another part of it is they effectively keep Warner Brothers Discovery, TNT Sports, whatever you want to call it. They need to figure that out, by the way. As somebody who's written about this like 100 times, like it's TNT, it's TBS, it's TNT Sports, it's Warner Brothers Discovery. Like they need to figure out what their name is. It's absurd. Anyways, but they keep them as a media rights partner. And so it's like now you have this media rights deal with Amazon, with ESPN, with NBC, and effectively with TNT still, even though you're not giving them any games. And so I think it's a huge win for the NBA, and you avoid deposition. So I don't think this lawsuit could have gone better for the NBA.
Okay, you can go winner or loser. What's your next one?
I'm going to go loser from a perception standpoint, at least. I think it's ESPN. I think even though you're getting inside the NBA in some sort of weird whatever capacity it's going to be. It's going to be really interesting to see how they do this tight walk rope with NBA countdown. But you're basically admitting like you couldn't ever come up with an answer to inside the NBA. And they've been trying for as long as I can remember as an NBA fan going on 20 plus years to have an answer to inside the NBA. They've tried Bill Simmons. They've tried Stephen A. Smith. They've tried all these iterations and they've just never figured it out. And so now, yeah, they're getting it on their airwaves, but you're basically admitting like we could never come up with our own version of this, and we're just going to have to license it to our airwaves.
I would argue they never tried.
I think they tried. I just don't think they could do it.
Well, what I mean is format-wise, they never put a product on their air that could do the things that Inside the NBA did, which by which I mean like the open casual nature of the conversation, the flowing in and out of it of NBA talk, the how long is it going to be on question that hangs over every episode of Inside the NBA. And I wonder, will those things actually happen still on the days when this show is now going to be on ESPN? I mean, I don't know how anyone agrees to this if that's not going to be the case, but ESPN seemed pretty freaking committed to its, Subway ad dollars and Nike ad dollars that it was getting when it was forcing Michael Wilbon to talk for 15 seconds at a time for the past 5 years. This is hugely different. So I guess I would say ESPN is I hear you that it is a loser, but I think that if it actually embraces what Inside the NBA is and just lets the show happen, it quickly becomes a winner because it basically admits defeat in the right ways, in my opinion.
That's fair. I do think too, if you want to talk about potential losers, like if I'm Stephen A. Smith, this isn't great.
Oh yeah, he was on my list.
Okay, yeah. Why don't you get into that then? Because I think when I was coming up with it, he kind of stood out as the most glaring one.
Well, I mean, so I'll say at the top, he's already come out and responded on his first podcast episode after ESPN officially announced this, saying that this doesn't affect him at all, but he is a politician. He's saying that, intentionally. I don't know if that means that he already has clarity on what it means for his future as one of the panelists on NBA Countdown for them right now as he negotiates a new contract. Maybe he does already know that this doesn't matter to him, or he's just saying that to kind of maintain the high ground in these kind of talks that he's having. But yeah, I mean, this was one of the things that he had hitched his wagon to, as sports rights, live sports are increasingly the most important, if not the only important thing that matters to ESPN's bottom line. And I'm part of one of those sports. So that matters. I have more value as a result of that. Now, there will still be some of these games during the regular season where NBA Countdown still airs, but that takes a huge hit for Stephen A. to be able to tell ESPN what he's worth to them in a world where all they had to do was trade some Big 12 crap to now get a show that puts his value considerably below where it was a month ago. So I think I disagree with his own comments that he's fine here. I think that it does matter, and it might take a couple million off of whatever he can ask for.
Yeah, and if you're ESPN and you're saying we are going to lose Stephen A. Smith, how do we replace him? I think you replace him in the aggregate, and having the access now to the inside the NBA guys, that gives you like a lot of leverage there. That gives you the potential to have Charles Barkley on First Take. That gives you the potential to have Shaquille O'Neal and Kenny Smith on your airwaves. And that's just another way, like, you can fill the massive void that Stephen A. Smith would leave behind. Wow, I think Stephen A. Smith is going to stay at ESPN. I think the only question is whether he's leasing his content to ESPN or whether he's still a full-time ESPN employee. And so maybe he's a winner because this just signals that's clearly the way ESPN is moving forward. But if you just want to look at it in a vacuum, I don't know how you could view Stephen A. Smith as a winner in this. I really don't.
Maybe it makes the conversations that we were hearing a while ago about his efforts to include his podcast as part of his deal with them. Maybe it brings some energy back to that side. I mean, the details on this have been few and far between because it's still not, his deal's not up till next summer. It is still a while away, but yeah, we'll see. I thought in the spirit of him being the ultimate wordsmith, I did think it was hilarious that he ended his comments on the podcast about this whole move with welcoming. I look forward to welcoming all those guys to the channel that I work on for now. He said for now at the end of it with a very pointed emphasis there. But just to tie a bow on this, I had one very tiny winner, ESPN Plus.
They're losing all those Big 12 games.
Yeah, true. No, I would hope that they'll do what I imagine that they would do with whatever longer form stuff that I've been hoping they try to acquire, which Inside counts as, which is put 30 minutes of it on air and put the next hour or plus or whatever, like they do with McAfee's show, on ESPN Plus. The difference here, though, is they appear to kind of own the rights for the days that they are airing it, which means it would only happen there. There's no go to YouTube also version. And that could genuinely add some value to people trying to convince people to pay for a streaming service. If you say, hey, for the rest of Inside the NBA for the next hour or two, go to our app, and that's the only place that it'll be airing. So that's kind of an if, but I think that it could go there. I also had David Zaslav as a winner. I think TNT kind of made out like as well as you possibly could have hoped. They're paying no money for these Big 12 rights, which help their, tiny things, not tiny, their carriage fees, the amount of money they're getting per cable subscriber as they negotiate with Comcast and DirecTV and all these types of places. They are keeping this talent, which is no insignificant thing. They're getting an estimated, per the Wall Street Journal and The Athletic, $350 million in the next 5 years for continuing to operate and advertise for and provide talent for NBA TV and League Pass. The NBA is paying them money, a lot of money for a while here. The highlight rights, which you mentioned a minute ago, these are not insignificant things, as we've spent so much time kind of spinning our wheels on how does TNT pivot after David Zaslav, the guy who runs the place, basically stiff-armed the NBA and said, we don't need you as much as you think we do. I'm not saying we're there that he's right, but this is going pretty well as a plan B here for TNT in a post-NBA world starting next year.
Yeah, it feels weird to praise David Zaslav because he's become such a punching bag in the media space over the course of the last year or so, and for good reason in a lot of cases. But like I said earlier, like they could have just walked away from this. Like they could have just been like, "Oh shucks, we lost the NBA. This sucks. Like, what are we going to do next?" They dug their heels in. They filed a lawsuit. They drug this thing out. They were willing.
And we all laughed when they filed the lawsuit. Like, okay, guys, you're just embarrassed. You're trying to do damage control. This is PR.
Yeah, I mean, this is not insignificant. And even, I mean, you and I have both kind of snickered at the Big 12 rights, but like, hey, if they're putting, Arizona State against TCU on a Thursday night.
I was just going to say, I'll be snickering until I'm, it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm angrily turning on the channel or turning on Max to have to find yet another place to watch the damn conference that my school decided to be a part of because the Pac-12 fell apart. So
yeah, and it sounds like they're going to pretty prominently feature these games as a part of their plan to replace the programming they lost with the NBA. And so I think, look, I think
Kansas basketball, Colorado football, it's not nothing.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what games they got because these were games that were pigeonholed to be streaming only at ESPN. Yeah. So like, we're not going to be getting like, I mean, who knows where Coach Prime will be by then, but it's going to be second tier Big 12 games, but like second tier college football games rate, like second tier college football.
Every Big 12 game is second tier. So they can get some decent fan bases at least. Yeah.
And so I do think though, just to put a bow on this, like, I think this is kind of WBD accepting its lot. And they're saying like, hey, we're not ESPN. We're not Fox Sports even, but we do have this collection of rights packages. We have the number 2 pro wrestling company. We have the French Open. We have some NASCAR, I believe. Like they are just they're like an NBA team that's rebuilding and they're just compiling assets and maybe they'll all fit and it will be a cohesive thing. Or maybe they'll eventually have to trade off a bunch of pieces and figure out a new strategy. But I think for now, like in terms of where they were even just 2 months ago, like I think this is a big win for WBD.
So the other quick thing here is it sounds like TNT will develop this inside sports show that had kind of been teased since they lost the NBA, including this same cast, but maybe some kind of touring band of court jesters and whatever the 2 guys in Muppets who are sitting up in the theater and laughing at everything are, and they're going to go to the MLB playoffs on TBS, or they'll go to, they still have the March Madness tournament that those guys outside of Shaq are involved with and college sports and everything else. Will people watch that?
I don't know. Maybe it depends on the talent. Like if you're going to tell me it's Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal.
Sounds like it will be.
Yeah, then maybe for high profile events, at least. I don't know how sustainable it is, 52 weeks a year or however long they're trying to do it. But it's something. I mean, again, it just fits into that. We have these guys under contract. We might as well use them. Right. So I think it makes sense to at least try it.
I'll be curious how much they air inside the NBA on their own. I don't know if that will continue to happen, but just to say, hey, there's basketball on tonight. Our show is on. Watch us instead. Kind of, like ESPN does on Sunday mornings, like maybe they'll just kind of have that, like, the NFL show that ESPN produces. I don't know, again, if people will watch it, but what they do with the rest of the weeks that it's not on ESPN and how they just kind of deploy this talent now that they don't have the sport that these guys cover is going to be fascinating. I have one last quick one, which is Amazon and NBC. They don't get inside the NBA. They don't get Charles Barkley and Shaq and Ernie and Kenny. They got to pivot elsewhere. I'm still optimistic that they can get creative and the more the merrier here, but I'm sure executives in those places are like, great, ESPN gets more of the best guys. Fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's fine for them. I think look, I mean, inside the NBA is closer to ending than it was to starting, right? Like
True.
this is not
True.
a show that's probably going to be around a decade from now, and so at least not in this form. And so if you're Amazon and NBC, like I would welcome, you know, obviously it would have been a huge get to get inside the NBA to kick off your NBA partnership, but like to have to start from scratch, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world.
Did you have any more, or are we
No,
through
let's
with our winners and losers?
yeah, no, I think it was a lot of winners. That's it. It was kind of hard to. That's why I kind of tried to force feed ESPN in there. But I think this was like when I broke it down, like it's really a 3-team trade, and even the Big 12 comes out of it like all the better. So I think this was a deal that ultimately made sense for all parties involved.